Beneath the fog, behind the rust, sometimes they come back. There's only one internationally recognized Mopar master, Mark Warman, joined by his friends, family, and dream team, the Ghouls.
Nobody wants to take on the stuff that we take on.
Reviving the past.
100% untouched survivor.
Resurrecting the icons of American muscle.
We are the Shaolin priests of Mopar.
Uncovering stories.
It's the baddest car we have here.
And restoring dreams.
The most iconic muscle car on the planet.
Putting cars back where they belong. On the road.
Here we go.
Beyond a passion.
Oh, that's wild.
One man's obsession. With Mopar perfection. This is Graveyard Carz.
1971 Cuda.
Yeah.
340 3-speed. The reason you're leaning on it, because you don't like to stand, right? It's a lot of pressure.
Does it matter if I touch?
Well, no, if it's just lazy or heavy people usually will lean like that. You keep standing prostrate.
So today, Mark called me out to go over this 1971 Cuda that we just got into the shop. Mark's handing this car off to me so I can make sure this car gets through the shop in a timely fashion. Mark's super busy. We got 100 cars here. He can't keep up with everybody. So he's been handing off clients to me, and it takes a load off his plate, and then I can see the car through the shop at that point. I love helping Mark. I love Mark to death. I have no problems helping him out. The problem that I have is he'll find a way to insult me, take a shot at me, put me down, as opposed to just saying, hey, Will, can you take over this client? And then we can just be done. But there's always way more to it with Mark. If I could find a way to just keep Mark on task for a whole day, we'd get more cars painted, more cars put together, more cars would be done if just keep him on task. But yeah, good luck with that. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm giving Will this car right here to handle for me.
Okay.
As you can tell, there's some slight surface rust in the frame rail. This is a real 1971 Cuda. It's a 340 3-speed manual transmission. It's good colors, GA4, which is your Winchester gray. Again, 3-speed manual transmission makes it way down there in the production figures. Much like the convertible that we did, the 71 purple car was one of 8 with a 340 and a 3-speed. This car is rough. Now, we've seen a lot of rough stuff, and we can certainly handle this rough stuff. We've done many of them. We built a car, a 71 Cuda, from scratch. We know how to build them. We know how to assemble them. Our problem is time. In this particular case, we are running out of time everywhere we turn. We have this car that has to go, the car sitting behind you, camera boy. This car has to go in 2 weeks. We have lots of work to do. This 71 Cuda needs to have literally, short of about 5 metal parts, everything replaced on it. Both front frame rails, both rear frame rails. You go to the front, you need fenders, hood, valance, inner fenders, firewall, cowl. Work your way back. The rockers, I think, are good on it, which is unlike the Phantom Cuda. The Phantom Cuda had bad rockers on it. We had donor ones back at the AMD Installation Center. We need wheelhouses, inner and outer trunk floor, main floor extensions, rear body panel, crossmember, quarter panels, roof interstructure pieces. Literally everything on this car is rotten, but it is the numbers matching 340 block and the numbers matching 3-speed transmission that the guy wants to build into, I believe, a 446 barrel tribute car. It's his car. We're replacing most of the metal on it. Whether we're going to be able to save the numbers in the body, I don't know until we get there. But in the end, it'll be very much like the cars that we built. You got the 71 catalog Cuda, the black car with the white billboards on it, 426 Hemi, automatic transmission. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful car that thing turned out to be. You know, this car is very much like the world famous Phantom Cuda. In many ways, and in some ways it's not, they both need about the same amount of metal. In this particular case, one thing that they're going to share in common is that our friends at the AMD Installation Center have volunteered to do this one body for us. That's going to save us months in the metal shop. So it's going to hopefully be a leg up so that we can get a little bit ahead, or at least caught up on things. A little bit
You're
of rust.
delusional.
There's some peekaboos up here on the upper cowl. The floors
There's
really,
no floors.
No, they're
There's no
pretty-
rails.
You could patch. Okay, we know it's a bad car. What's this remind you of? Being one end to the other.
Your car. Mark's completely lost his mind. Remember when he said his Charger just had like some slight surface rust? Now I have his car cut in half, waiting for a new clip to get put on it. That's not surface rust. The car has been sitting at the bottom of the ocean for the past 10 years. This is the same routine.
So if you're going to take shots at my Charger,
Look at your Charger.
we're done. Yeah, it's a very, very nice. Why is that funny?
There's
to you?
nothing left.
Now, my Charger did have a lot of rust on it, okay? It's all semantics, isn't it? If you say surface rust, one man's surface rust is another man's rust bucket. This particular car of mine had quite a bit of rust on it. And yeah, we have to put a front clip on it, okay? I want everything perfect on my car. I would like to clarify one thing very important to the haters out there that are saying, why is Mark working on his car and not mine? Josh and I are doing all the metal work on my car. We are doing it in the evenings and on the weekends. We are not affecting our volume of cars in the least. It's exhausting. What it typically means is we won't have a lot of footage and coverage of it because the camera guys, these guys, they go home, play on the weekends. But you can see that we have the car dipped and it has a lot of extensive rust to it. We have the quarter panels, wheel houses. The main floor has already been replaced or cut out, not quite replaced yet. We did get a donor front clip for it. So Josh has been working stewardly on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays with me, getting it cut and trimmed and ready to go into place. So where that car is at right now is the old clip is off of it and it's ready to have the new clip put onto it. The only thing I don't appreciate is Will saying sarcastic things about my car. I can interpret my car, I can diagnose my car any way I want. It's none of his business, okay? You don't see me sticking my nose in his business, okay? He has his own little world out there that he lives in out there and wherever it is. All I know is pay attention to what you're doing and don't pay any attention to what I'm doing. What one compelling factor helped graveyard cars get off the ground? Besides the tray, the Wizard of Ice.
The Phantom Cuda.
That's right, the 1971 Phantom Cuda, which was a 446 barrel 4-speed.
Right.
How many of those they make? 446 barrel 4-speed?
300.
108. So this car is a factory 340 3-speed manual transmission.
Okay.
It is also Winchester gray.
Beautiful color.
It's a very, very rusty car that needs a lot of metal, but the owner that we're building it for wants a real, it's actually a tribute car, but in this particular case, we're not just gonna build a tribute, we're gonna build an original 71 340 Cuda.
Okay.
So it's important that we keep as many of the original numbers, much of the originality of the car as possible. And why is that? Do you remember the 71 Cuda convertible?
Purple?
FC7, yeah.
Yeah.
In violet car, right?
Yeah.
How many of those were built?
8.
7 or 8, I think it was 8
Yeah.
maybe. Okay. This is a 340 3-speed hardtop. How many of those were made? These are good quizzes, and the reason I'm doing this is because these are important codes for you to know, because when you're out there in the field, Will's been helping me a lot with helping customers, right?
Yeah.
I hand a customer off to you and they call up and they say, hey, I've got this black 1968 Dodge Charger. Well, that's cool, we've only got 168, but what happens when they call up and they say, I got a 71 Cuda? You should know who it is. Just say, give me a paint code. And they give off the paint code. For this case, it's Winchester gray, right?
Right.
And that paint code is?
I've only done this color like once.
So again, I'm not just pointing these things out to catch Will on camera, like a deer in the headlights saying, oh, I don't know. First of all, I would like to say, you should know. Will, you should know. I've been teaching you this stuff for 35 years, he should know it. He chooses not to know it. The reason it's so important is I won't always be here. I won't always be a tap on the shoulder away from asking, what's the VIN, what's the car, what's the engine, what's the transmission, how many were built? Why wouldn't you want to educate yourself on that? So if I have to use means of insulting them, putting them down, and yeah, frankly, catching them on camera and embarrassing them like I've done, it's tough love, folks. I love Willie. He's like a son to me. He's like an illegitimate son I never had. I'm gonna take a look in here. You can just look up the paint code, Winchester gray. Take a look in there. Go ahead while I take a look around here.
I don't even know.
Just turn to the page of the book that talks about paint colors.
This is great. This is exactly what Mark does. He does it at car shows. He does it in front of customers. He puts me on the spot knowing I don't know the answer just to make me look silly. I don't need to know the paint code until the car comes into the shop and we're ready to paint. Until then, I don't need and nor do I care what the paint code is. There isn't a page.
Yeah, no, there is. It's.
Well, I don't know why.
There you go. GA4.
Okay, A4.
Okay. How many of those were built?
15.
Turn to the page
20.
that talks about how many were built with a 340 and a 3-speed.
It doesn't tell you.
This is exhausting. You guys at home think he's funny and this is all great and whatever. But here's an idea. Why don't you come down here and work with him for a week? Let me know what you think then.
No, it does.
Well, I don't know where. I don't know.
151.
I would have got there.
That's okay.
So now lately, Mark has been pressuring me a lot to get a certain 426 Hemi ready for a 69 Charger. The good news is I'm gonna have help today. Turns out old Rollo Pony had the day off and he volunteered to come in and give me a hand. Mark felt that I'm getting way behind in the shop here, and Royal and I have never had the opportunity to work on camera building a 426 Hemi, have we, Royal?
Nope, I've never built a 426 Hemi.
What? Where have you been? Ever?
Not here.
This engine has a lot of detailed fasteners that hold down the heads and the intake, and
They're aftermarket fasteners, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we
Shall
get
we
going?
get started? Heck yes. Let's do this, buddy. High five.
Gloves?
Gloves? I got them.
Coming up, many hands make light work when Royal helps Dougie build out the 426 Hemi for a 1969 Dodge Charger.
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
But will Dougie discover the limits of Royal's dedication?
I'm gonna need your help adjusting the valves.
Oh,
What do you mean, oh?
Mark continues to give Will the rundown on the 1971 Cuda and reveals what makes this build so important.
So this is Phantom Cuda 2.0, folks.
But is Will ready to take full responsibility for this Cuda? Or is he doomed to repeat his past mistakes?
He did a public execution
It was already...
of an innocent flight.
Find out when Graveyard Carz returns.
Differences in these heads on these Hemis are really cool. They have these studs that go down through those holes above the cylinders
okay.
into the valley. So you have to put washers and nuts to hold the
in that
head
valley.
down.
Okay.
And you got to be careful not to drop them down through the lifters or we're done.
Piece
How's
of
that for
cake.
pressure?
I can fix that. Because I know me.
There you go. So here's the head gasket we're going to use. They have these new fiber head gaskets.
Oh, nice.
So from the factory originally, the head gaskets were just a flat steel shim. Very thin, no coating, and we've had a little trouble with those leaking. So Mark did some research and got a hold of Mancini Racing, and he found a fiber covered gasket that works a lot better. So this is essentially the same gasket that we use on the 440, the 383, the 340, all of our other engines. It's a really good head gasket, and we like this a lot better than that flat metal shim. Okay, you want to give me a hand with this thing?
Yep.
All right. I'm really glad to have Royal help me with this because these heads are heavy. They're back breakers, and setting these down on there and all the details that we have to do to put these heads on the Hemis, it's really nice to have extra eyes and hands to help with this tedious job. Nice, just like that.
Okay.
So we're just gonna put a couple head bolts in to hold this on.
Okay.
So the 426 Hemi heads use the same amount of fasteners as the 440 and 383, but they're just a little bit different. The Hemi heads use 4 studs that are screwed into the head, and they actually go down into the valley above the lifters.
Yep.
I'll go ahead and throw a head gasket on this side. The other difference is 5 of the long head bolts on the Hemi hold the rocker stands in place. So altogether you have 17 fasteners that all have to be treated differently. Perfect, just like that. Okay, so we're just gonna put a couple bolts in to hold these because we have to put the push rods in now before we put the rockers on.
Oh, okay.
The push rods have to go down through these holes here. And once you
Oh, I
have the
see.
rocker on, it's difficult to get those push rods in. So now that the head's on, we're gonna put the outer bolts in place, the 4 nuts and washers on the studs in the valley, before we put the rockers and the 5 remaining bolts in place. We have an outer row of head bolts.
Okay.
We set the rocker shafts in after we put the push rods in through these holes, and then these 5 bolts become the center head bolts.
Oh, okay.
And then we have the studs inside here in the valley.
Okay, that's
with nuts
just
and washers.
Hemi only, right? The
Hemi
studs in
only.
here?
Hemi only.
Chamfer goes up toward the head, right? Both head.
That's correct. Chamfer side of the washer goes up.
Yep.
Okay, that was good thinking on your part, Royal, putting those paper towels in there so I don't drop these washers down through there.
I just know how my fingers are.
Okay, so once we have most of the bolts in place, we have to put the push rods in place through the head because they go through tiny little holes. They have to go in before the rockers can go on. Interesting note, the push rods on the Hemi are 2 different lengths. The exhaust push rods are longer than the intake push rods. You get over to the wedge engines and the exhaust push rods and the intake push rods are all the same length. This is all just part of the unique design of the Hemi. Okay, I have all the long push rods.
I got short ones.
For the exhaust.
You got the short ones?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So upper, lower, upper, lower, upper, lower.
Yep.
Upper, lower. You've got all the intake in?
Yep.
Okay. All of our intakes are in, all of our exhausts are in. Okay.
Ready to install the rocker assembly?
Yeah.
Cool.
Let's see how this goes, huh? Once we have the push rods all in place, it's time for the rocker shafts.
This is a loaded car, but it's no billboards. The guy wants billboards on it. Now, the reason you're here and the reason you're going to handle this is because I'm busy. I was talking to Mike, AMD, the other day. Yeah, nice guy. All right, we were talking about the Phantom Cuda. I said, boy, I sure wish you could do another one of those. I got one that's a mess, a hot mess, and I got snow time. And you know, he actually volunteered to help.
Oh, he's gonna do another one?
He did. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
It was about 8 years ago that the installation center back there, the AMD installation center, volunteered to help us out with the Phantom Cuda. This car is very much like that one. It will need to go on a jig and it will need to have nearly every single panel replaced on it. I wouldn't trust another shop in this country to do it for me because I'm putting my name on it. I sent him pictures. I said, you sure you want to do it? He goes, it looks just like the Phantom Cuda. So this is Phantom Cuda 2.0, folks. When you look at that Phantom Cuda and they brought it back, and figure that every panel's been replaced on it, which means parts are just floating around in there and they all come together and all in a car and now it's a car again. If you're able to open the driver's door, take the striker out and find the original EV2 Tour Red paint underneath the striker, they were able to put that striker back in space physically on a car that had all new panels on it except for that pillar. That is perfection. And the reason Will's out here right now is we're gonna go over a few of the key detail points on the car, make sure that you have it ready to ship off to him because he's gonna have the AMD installation center put everything out. They will methodically go from the rear taillight panel to the front valance, repair, replace, straighten, structurally reinforced, and put the car exactly back where it should be. So they're gonna help us out with this.
Great.
But this guy's gonna be calling you quite a bit.
Okay.
All right? He's gonna be saying, hey, can you help me out, Will? I'm wanting to look at some of the cars online. What's the paint code for Winchester Gray?
A4. You're welcome.
How do you know that? You wanna look at it? You wanna look it up? You're pretty sure it's A4?
GA4.
Oh, GA4, yeah.
But the computer recognizes A4.
But see, you sound good if you say that, right?
Right.
It says, how many of my cars were built? 343-speed manual transmission. How many were built?
25.
No, it was actually 151. Here, once again, in
No,
the book. Just
I
turn to
don't-
the page that has that.
I don't want the book.
Okay.
This has more to do with Mark beating me down and insulting me and all the stuff he does than actually teaching me something like Tony would do.
So you want to be able to sound like you're in the thing, right? I'm handing this off to the Wheelmeister, the Wizard of Will.
But see, I also have the luxury of when they text me asking these questions, I'll just come ask you.
But you could just answer them. What if it's at 11 o'clock at night and I'm sleeping?
I'm sleeping too. This is all Mark has to do, is just say, hey, Will, will you take over this car and make sure it gets done on time? No problem, Mark, and be done.
So I need to make sure that this car is handled with care because it's got to go back to him. In this case, we're not going to send it back to him on a pallet. We're going to have it a roller.
Okay.
So it needs to be sure it's a roller right now. Get anything off it except roller stuff. Talk to Shane about any used donor parts that we may or may not have.
Okay.
And I think we have some used rockers and some pieces like that, because the bigger the donor pieces, the better off that we are. I think that the used donor parts are a brilliant way to save time, money, and maintain the structural integrity of a car, maybe even more so than if we do it. So, meaning this, take a look at my Charger that I'm working on right now. It needed both front frame rails, both front inner fenders. It was bad. So I reached out to the guy up at Liberty Moparts, and he had a 4-door. Nobody's gonna build a 4-door. Now I have a beautiful, clean front clip that's ready to go onto my car, so I don't have to go out and build the whole front inner structure again like we did on the catalog car. So the more large components like that, it'll help out the installation center, and it'll also preserve the original integrity of a Mopar that was built 50 years ago. Get this thing loaded up, make contact with Mike. I know you have his number. Let him know what the plan is. When it gets back and it's all beautiful, there's a few things I want you to really focus on, like you did on the 71 Phantom Cuda. I feel very good handing this off now to Will. I think he has grown a lot. I don't mean just he put weight on, he's done that, but I just mean spiritually he's grown, mentally he's grown. Yeah, we fight and we have fun with it, but I have been handing him off a lot of cars lately. People like him, he communicates well. I don't even have the time to communicate, and even if I did, in most cases, I forget. Will pulled a 187 on a fly. Right about here,
What is the?
he did a public execution
It was already.
of an innocent fly. The fly was 1 day old. It has a 3-day life expectancy. You cut it.
I talked to an entomologist on this, showed him the footage, and he reassured me that fly, it's only got 3 days to live. Or he did just stroke out and fell right in the middle of my paint, again, making me the victim, not the villain. Are you done
with that? Not really. I have another key question for you. You took the dump in the men's room this morning? No. I am serious.
No.
Every day somebody goes in that men's room and they take one of those twister dungs where you walk in and it's spinning around and there's stuff caught in it, like in the movie Twister where the cow was going around like that. I want to know who it is.
I don't know.
I saw corned beef and I want to know who is eating corned beef at lunch or at dinner that's making that happen in there, because I'm not going to walk in and vomit again.
Now, let's see if we can put this puzzle together.
I think we gotta flip it though. We go that way. There we go.
Thank you, buddy.
So I would like to take just 1 second before they put the rocker assemblies on here to talk about, you see the bright purple paint. The entire rocker shaft assembly is new. Mancini Racing makes it. This is a good quality part that you can put on that meets all the OEM specifications, so you can still use the original push rods and all those things. It's got a chrome moly shafts, which is the same kind of a product that the original ones would have been, but they're billet aluminum, the stands, versus the original cast iron ones, so you're gonna save some weight. The springs are new. The rockers are original Mopar rockers. The only thing they change out is the adjuster. Instead of being a flat tip screw, they put an Allen head or a hex head in there. But the rest of it is 100% original Hemi DNA looking parts. They're the exact same footprint, same height, same length, same width. Everything about these is right.
That's why I got you here.
I'm always watching.
Keep me in line. What you see us doing here is making sure that we're installing the rockers correctly over the dowel pins and lining up all the bolt holes. A lot of stuff that you have to line up all at the same time. So while we're putting the rockers on, we have to be careful to make sure all the push rods are in place in alignment and not lose our alignment on the dowel pins.
We should probably put the bolts in before we
Sure, that'd be helpful.
screw those down tight. I'm just saying.
I'm good with that. Once we have the rockers in place, we can put the 5 remaining head bolts in and torque them down. With that done, we can go to the other side, do the remaining rocker shafts, and then we can torque the head bolts. Okay, Royal, here we go.
Piece of cake.
Piece of cake, torque sequence. So the torque sequence is really important on engines. You want to follow the torque sequence that's in the book closely and make sure you follow the torque specs.
1, 2, 3.
One thing that's been really helpful to me is to have somebody pointing out every single bolt that you do in advance, because it's really easy to get lost. Now wait, you're getting ahead of me. Let me do the first one. Maybe some people are bright enough to do that. I am not.
Okay.
We're gonna start at 50 pounds.
Yep.
We're gonna torque it down. There it is.
Oh,
Okay, that's 1, 2,
yep, 2, 3.
3. There's the easy ones. Now, we got the hard ones. Still set at 50, right? Should be. So this is the way Mark and I like to do these. We go over the head bolts in 2 sequences. We start at 50 pounds, we go up to 70. It helps us to make this even. We've been putting heads on these engines since we were 16 years old. Maybe we used to overheat our engines and change the head gaskets a lot. But anyway, this may not be the way everybody does it, but this works good for us. Here we go.
Here, turn
Royal and
over. I know how to adjust valves.
Okay, you watch the cam. I'm gonna crank the engine.
You don't need to watch the cam, you just watch the valves.
We've also got our marks up here, Royal.
Oh, they're open, you can see them. I'm not used to that.
We do things the easy way around here. TDC, top dead center. You like that?
Yeah.
Still to come, confidence in Royal's capabilities begin to wane.
Mark, it's not okay to hurt my feelings.
I mean, he's only been doing it 12 years, for God's sake.
Things come to a head when Royal pulls one of his classic stunts.
Will you look at your
I
watch?
gotta pick up my daughter.
You said that last week.
And how will Dougie fare when he loses his right-hand man?
Ah!
Find out when Graveyard Carz returns.
Okay, Royal, if you want to run a really thin bead right across here, right in the 2 corners, I'm going to lay that front cork gasket across the front of the valley.
Okay.
Beautiful. Mark, be proud. When installing the intake on these engines, I like to use some sealer across the ends and all the vulnerable areas because the intake manifold is the gasket. It doesn't have a metal pan gasket like a 440 and 383 do. So those dowel pins or studs help us keep this gasket in place. You can use too much sometimes. Mark likes to do that. I like to use the right amount. Okay.
Same with the back.
Yes. You're doing
I got
great,
the
Royal.
shakes.
No, you're not. You're perfect.
I got the hippie shakes.
Hippie shakes. Beautiful. Very nice, Royal. Okay. All right, now we're going to set the intake manifold gaskets in place. Nice.
Should I put another dab of...
You can.
We're not just pretty faces here at Graveyard Carz. Just for and giggles, you know?
Yeah. You guys have been teaching me a lot about that.
Mark, it's not okay to hurt my feelings.
They don't know I'm standing back here right now. Okay, so if you could avoid that kind of stuff, it just kind of gives it away. What we call the fourth wall. So you go on back. Now, in fairness, okay, being in front of a camera is awkward, and I get that. I mean, he's only been doing it 12 years, for God's sake.
I think it'll hold oil.
Okay.
Royal's been what we call a slower learner, a little slow on the uptake, if you will.
Well,
Want some help with that? Oh, that's easy.
yeah, it's easy.
Do you not do it on this either? I sure would.
Okay, it's free. Okay, Royal.
Interesting, because I buy it for about $30 a tube. It doesn't feel free. Now, here's another example of somebody not being a quick learner, Dougie. Dougie's slow ability to learn lessons cost him his face once. He pulled a burning marshmallow out of a fire and wedged it on his face. And his face burst into flames. My papa had to put it out with a rake.
Okay, we'll see if this holds oil. So another interesting thing about the Hemi is it uses studs on the intake manifold, which is helpful when you're aligning the intake with the valley. Just make sure you have it all aligned over all the studs properly and all the sealer in place, and it should just slide right down. Once you have the intake where you want it, looks good, you can install the fasteners. Just like that.
Okay. Where's all this go?
Okay, Royal, very simple. Don't drop them.
Okay. I'll set
This
'em
goes
there.
here,
It's on that side.
this goes here. Just follow the sequence. This is the
Okay.
back and
Okay.
towards the front. The brackets we're installing now are the throttle cable holder bracket and the throttle return spring brackets. The fasteners on the intake manifold are different lengths, 2 different length bolts, and also different length studs. So I like to lay them all out, put them in like say an egg carton or a box, so they're all in order when you go to install these, because it's a little bit tricky. Okay, Royal, so these little tiny 1/4-inch screws go down to 12 foot-pounds. That's
Okay.
not much. So I just do these with a little tiny 1/4-inch tool. So anyway, I'm just gonna run these down just by feel and kind of a crisscross pattern like you normally torque something. You know all about that, right?
Yep.
You've torqued a few manifolds.
Work from the center out.
Yeah. Now, as soon as I'm done here, I'm gonna need your help adjusting the valves.
Oh,
What do you mean, oh? What are you looking at your watch for?
I gotta pick up my daughter.
You said that last week.
No,
Yeah, you did.
I wasn't here last week.
Oh, the
Maybe
week
the week
before.
before.
Last time you helped me, you said, I gotta leave early.
No, that's my MO. Just tell Mark I had a doctor's appointment.
Well, Royal had a previous engagement. He's leaving early again. He says something about helping his daughter start a cinnamon roll business. So I'll be flying solo through the end of this build, but he did promise me some cinnamon rolls when he returns. So now that I have the heads on the long block, I'm gonna roll this over. I'm gonna put the oil pan, the windage tray, and the pan gasket in place. So the new windage trays that we have is a composite. It has the gasket built into it. What that means is I don't have to install 2 extra gaskets and that much more sealer, which gives me that much more chance of leakage. The next thing I like to do, and while the engine's upside down, is install the exhaust manifolds and gaskets. It's that much easier right there. All the fasteners are right in front of you. It's that easy to do. So the last thing I like to install is the oil pump. We use a high volume, high pressure oil pump to ensure that we have good oil flow throughout the engine. Before I try to start this engine, I want to prime it first with the oil pump, pressure it up with oil before we try to run it. So when I say prime the engine, what I'm talking about is this oil pump right here. It's going to pump oil through the engine. It's essentially the heart of the oiling system.
The oiling system, if it doesn't have good oil pressure and volume throughout the engine, things fail. The way the oiling system works is you have an oil pump. That's what he's got right there. Brand new high volume, high pressure oil pump that we're going to install on the block. Coming out of the end of it is the drive gear. So if you look very carefully on that snout, you will see a hex-shaped slot for an oil pump drive shaft to go down into. You take that oil pump drive shaft, which runs off of the cam. It'll run the oil pump. Every time that cam moves, it's pumping oil. That oil pump drive gear is also a distributor drive gear, which all, when you set them together, you have a distributor, oil pump drive gear, and you have the oil pump, all pass through the front part of the engine and collectively give you an ignition system and oil the engine. All of the big blocks are that way.
So we're going to take this priming rod to run the oil pump. We're going to run it down through the distributor opening. We don't have the distributor in, obviously. We're going to drop it down through the bearing where the distributor sets in, and it's going to go right down into the oil pump, and it's going to spin the pump. So this rod is going to be turning counterclockwise. We're going to use an electric drill. We're going to spin it, and we also have an oil pressure gauge up here. When we spin this, it's going to go up to whatever pressure this oil pump has the ability to pump up to. Okay, so sometimes they pressure up right away. Sometimes it may take 30 seconds or maybe 60 seconds, but you'll know it because this thing, the gauge, will read whatever pressure that pump goes up to. You'll also feel the load in the drill when you're hanging onto that drill. When it catches prime, it's going to lug the drill down. And I'm going to give it a spin and see what happens. Here's our pressure gauge. Okay, so it hasn't loaded up yet. You'll see it on the gauge when it does.
Now, when you see that oil pressure gauge going up, that's beautiful. You don't hear the engine bogging down, the little drill motor. That's not so beautiful. You're gonna see why we have pressure, but no bog down on that drill.
There it goes. It's starting to get some pressure now. Ah!
Now, what you see Mr. Wizard has done over there in all of his amazingness is, after checking all of the torque specs, assembling everything, giving a tutorial to Royal, building the entire engine out from the crankshaft all the way up to the intake manifold and getting it ready to do an oil prime, he overlooked one key thing. and that is make sure that whoever assembled the rocker shafts pointed the oiling hole to the rocker and not to the victim standing there trying to do an oil pressure test.
I guess I should have put the valve covers on.
Again, slow learner. Let's just imagine that that was gasoline. Remember Richard Pryor?
Still to come. With Royal out of the picture, Mark steps in to wrap up the 426 Hemi the right way.
You put the distributor in, so have you taken it out and turned it 180 to make it right?
But after all these years, can Mark trust his own family and friends to do the job correctly?
It is my theory that that is not going to work very well.
Find out when Graveyard Cars returns.
So once Doug has the engine all completely built out to a point where we're ready to try to do a test run, there's a lot of work ahead of him still. We have to get it moved onto the easy run stand. Once you get that, you have to bolt everything down. You have to add a bell housing and a flywheel so you have something for the starter to engage. You have leads that have to be connected so that you have power. You have fuel that has to be connected so that you have fuel. The exhaust system, we have an old decrepit system that we've saved off of a car that works great on the Hemis. We have one for a 383, a 440, and a 340. You connect all of those things, which takes some time to make all those connections, but you do it as though it's in the car. That way, when he's got it all laid out, we can hook up the exhaust system to it, fire that up, get ready to crank this thing over. Because if you do all those things and you turn that exhaust fan on, you're ready to start an engine. Looks like a nice wrinkle, around 200 degrees.
200 degrees, baked.
Okay,
Baked.
so you feel good. You've checked oil.
Earl?
Yeah. Water.
Water?
We got fuel, right?
According to you, yes, we have.
Boom, 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 boom. Pumping real nice. You put the distributor in, so have you taken it out and turned it 180 to make it right?
Yeah,
Because Dougie always puts it in 180 out.
I put it in the way I feel it should go, and then I take it out and I reverse it.
We're good. We're doing good now. Would you like to try to start this? Do you think the batteries are both dead, I would assume?
Sure. I'd bet on it.
All right. 1969 Dodge Charger, 426 Hemi 4-speed. How many were built?
How would I know?
Take a shot, any shot. How many? 40?
1,400.
207. That's the worst guess I've ever heard in my life. Yeah.
69 Hemi Chargers, huh?
Okay, let's turn that
207.
coil
Okay.
power on. Turn the old fuel pump on. Double check. Huh? Do you not want to run that? You just want to run the mechanical version?
Yeah.
Okay. We have the mechanical pump hooked up, but he also has it hooked up to a electric fuel pump.
Yeah.
And you're hoping that it'll suck the fuel past the electric fuel pump into the mechanical pump and run the engine.
Right.
Okay. What I'm amazed at is Doug knows mechanics really well. He has a mechanical fuel pump connected, but it's getting its fuel source not from a can right below it, which is how it's designed to work. It'd be a fuel tank. In this case, he has it running into the fuel pump, an electric fuel pump. Now it has to count on not only doing its job of creating enough PSI, which is like 4 or 5 pounds to get up to the carburetors, but it also has to draw the fuel past the electric fuel pump that isn't turned on. Doesn't want to turn it on. Wants to make it draw it up past it all on its own. And it is my theory that that is not going to work very well. Advance too far. Turn it back. Hey, 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 hey! Look at that. Listen to that. Wow. Yep. Weird, it won't pull the fuel past the electric fuel pump, will it? Huh, so strange. Not a quick learner. Running after. Once you have the engine up and running and you listen for things like the lifters, make sure they got adjusted right. You look for oil leaks, you look for water leaks. You set the timing by ear just to get it running. You just want to get it running. You also need to break in the cam, which is usually to set the RPMs at around 2,000 RPM, give a little, take a little, for 20 minutes. Let it run, make sure the thermostat is opening up, check your temperatures. Make sure that the water temperature below the thermostat is the same as water temperature above it or very close to it. That tells you that you've opened up your thermostat and that the block is now full of water. We don't use antifreeze during test runs. Keep in mind, since you are running fast, that means the centrifugal advance is also engaging on the distributor. So at an idle, the weights are all collected in and you have a real live version of what your timing is. At 2,000 RPM, they're flaring out. Those weights spin out and that advances the distributor. So at 2,000 RPM, I cannot set the initial timing. I have to wait till we get our 20-minute break in. Once that 20-minute break in's in and everything else is working, we can idle it down. I can set the timing to exactly, in this particular case, 5, 6, 7 degrees before top dead center. We'll play with it more once it's in the car and has antifreeze in it and the fuel it's going to be running on. But at that point, you set that timing to the best of your ability and that thing is done and ready to go in the car. See if it'll back off a little? More? Go ahead and shut it off. Tighten the distributor down right there. Okay, we got it. We just got to work with those carburetors a little bit. I'll try richening the system. They seem like they're getting real lean on the idle circuit. That's why it's faltering. If I can get those to adjust out, then I think we've got it set. Right now I got the timing set at about 5 degrees before. I think I'd have to check the book and see what it is, but that's pretty good. Seems to want to run right there. So I hope you're happy, Wiley. You almost blew my face off. Should be real happy with yourself. Okay, well that should be a wrap then. Let's get this thing put together. You got the transmission, you got the bell housing, you got everything ready to go for this thing, you got the K-member built out, you ready to go into the car, you got the wheels, the tires, the suspension, everything set up?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. Cut. Now, I think we've had a very, very good week. We got our 426 Hemi running, thank goodness. A few little setbacks from our Abby Normal friends out there. But it does run really good and it's ready to go in the car. The 69 Dodge Charger, this is the one we've been working on for a while over in the metal shop. It's a numbers matching 426 Hemi 4-speed EF8 green car. So we can move forward with the metal work and the paint work and know in our mind that we have that drivetrain done. I also feel very good that AMD is going to help us out by doing the metal work on our 71 Cuda Winchester gray car. We did do a Winchester gray car one time before, you guys remember? You enthusiasts of the show, it was Winchester gray. It was a tribute car, much like this one's going to be. That one had everything, billboards, rear window louvers, spoiler, beautiful car shaker hood. But I feel good that Will is taking over at the helm, and I would like to say after all of the crap that I give him, I do appreciate him helping me with the customers because we have an enormous amount of them. So if you guys are sitting at home right now and you're wondering why I'm not calling you and Will is, it's not because I don't like you, I do. It's because I'm busy. So, that's the best I can do at telling the truth. Cut.